Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of To The Point with me, Frank Pereira, on Rajya Sabha Television. It's election season at the moment and four very crucial states are polling even as we speak right now. And we are in the midst of hectic campaigning across these four states and one union territory. Of course, elections have come to an end in one of those states, which is Assam. But who better to talk about elections and the Congress party's prospects as far as these four states are concerned than former union minister and senior Congress leader, Mr. Manish Tiwari. Mr. Tiwari, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Pleasure's all mine.
Now, let's talk about Assam first, since the elections or the polling has come to an end there. What is the internal assessment of the Congress party as far as Assam is concerned?
Well, in Assam, we've been in government for 15 years. The government in Assam has delivered on the ground. Obviously, there would be a fair bit of anti-incumbency because you've been around for a while. But notwithstanding that, the reports are positive. The Congress party has put its best foot forward. It's fought in a united and a cohesive manner. And in both the phases, the phase which got completed on the 4th of April and the one which polled on the 11th of April, the feedback is good.
You know, the BJP has said that the voter turnout was extremely high in Assam, so the vote is for change and it's not for the Congress.
Well, you know, this entire bit about a high voter turnout has become a kind of a mirage. Because there was a time when voters' lists represented a lot of absentee ballots or a lot of people who were not really physically present or may have died, etc. So therefore, out of 1,000, there could be 400 such people, and then a 60% voter turnout would mean that you know, it would record as a low percentage. But the Election Commission over the past 10 or 15 years very diligently has cleaned out the electoral rolls. So as a consequence, if you look at any election, you will find a 70 to an 80% turnout. Now, this 70 to 80% turnout is not that people have started more enthusiastically participating in elections. It's just because electoral rolls are better managed. So, in terms of a percentage, it comes out looking better that 84% have polled, or let's say 90% have polled, or 70% have polled. So, it's really a statistical jugglery. It does not really tell you as to whether the state is voting for a change or it is voting for keeping the incumbent in.
Indeed. Indeed. You know, that's a very interesting analysis there, because this is the first time I'm hearing something like that. But, you know, Tarun Gogoi has been attacked time and again by the BJP, and his age in particular has been raised time and again by the BJP. Don't you think that that's going to be a factor?
Well, you see, ultimately, are we trying to suggest that people above a particular age should then retire from politics? And if that is what the suggestion is, that when you attack Mr. Tarun Gogoi's age, you know, essentially saying that he should go away, then the counter argument to that could be, then why should a man who's above 65 at all be there? So therefore, the Prime Minister is, you know, almost around 65 or is 65, then by that analogy, he should also go, because if the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court retires at 65, you know, why should the Prime Minister of India not follow the same principle? So the short point I'm trying to make is, this argument is a non sequitur. It's a non sequitur for the simple reason that age really has nothing to do with politics. It is experience, it's your ability to contribute. You know, if you've physically kept yourself fit, I see no reason why the nation should not benefit from your experience.
Okay, let's now move on and talk about West Bengal. Now, in a very interesting state there, because the Congress party has decided to go in for an alliance with the left. I don't know if I can call it an alliance, because even the Congress isn't calling it an alliance. What is it? Is it an understanding? Is it an alliance? What really is it?
Well, see, eventually, if you look at the larger picture, there is a need for all progressive, pluralistic, and nationalist forces to come together. But there's an attempt which is being made to change the fundamental narrative of India, to rewrite the whole idea of India in a very majoritarian manner. So, under those circumstances, the alliance of the Congress with the left, you know, or the arrangement of the Congress with the left, or the adjustment of the Congress with the left, is a natural and a historical alliance. And it's very good that it has happened in West Bengal because it presents a viable alternative to the people. And so, therefore, we do hope that this alliance or this arrangement would succeed in the case of West Bengal.
Why isn't the same with Kerala then?
For the simple reason that in Kerala, you have two progressive parties, who occupy the entire political space. Here, the battle is to keep the right reactionaries out, to keep those forces who believe in obscurantism, who believe in medievalism, who believe in fundamentalism, who want to communalize India's polity out. So, in the case of Kerala, when you have two progressive parties fighting for that space, there is really no need for an alliance.
Okay, so is that the way forward then, do you think, at least in the near future, to keep the BJP out of power? The Congress is going to do anything in its part to try and bring these, these alliances together and ensure that the BJP is kept out of power?
Well, I guess that it's not so much about the BJP alone, as also its ideological mentor, the RSS. As I was earlier articulating, that there is a process of trying to fundamentally alter the idea of India, a liberal idea which has held the field for the last 67 years. There's been an attempt to position the narrative, 60 degrees to the right. And so, therefore, all these statements that you see about Bharat Mata Ki Jai, the controversy about the national flag, the controversy about the national emblem, is all an attempt by these right reactionaries who feel that they've got their moment in the sun to reject, what has been the prevailing and the dominant narrative of India, which is inclusive. And under those circumstances, it is important that not only the left, but everybody else who believes in the secular idea of India or the secular ideal must come together.
And Congress is happy to play second fiddle, say, in the case of Bihar, where, it was not the it did not lead the alliance, but it played second fiddle.
Well, see, an alliance is based upon the ground realities. And the ground reality is that in Bihar, since 1989, unfortunately for various reasons, we slipped. So, therefore, you have to recognize your own position in a particular state and then punch according to your weight. There is no point in trying to claim the numero uno position when on the ground, the reality is totally different.
Let's talk about Kerala now, since we brought it up a short while ago. There have been several allegations of corruption in the government. The Chief Minister's name has come up as well. There are several high-level cabinet ministers' names also that have come up. Of course, the allegations have not been proved against them. But do you think that's going to be a factor on the ground in Kerala?
Well, the Chief Minister has rejected those allegations. In fact, the lady in question, when she moved the Kerala High Court in order to get an investigation conducted, the High Court has questioned the timing of the petition itself. So, therefore, there is a lot of politics in it. And it is really unfortunate that we have brought politics to a historic low. No stone has been left unturned in order to tarnish the reputation of an honorable man. And thus, Kerala, or the kind of campaign which has been going on in Kerala, which is obviously orchestrated by people who got hurt by prohibition, people whose other vested interests got hit, in addition to the opposition, in fact, should make all right-thinking people stand up and seriously think, is this the kind of politics that we should be doing as a country? Because ultimately, if politics is about issues, it is about trying to change the lives of people, that narrative, unfortunately, from the opposition is absent in Kerala.
Is all well within the Congress in Kerala? Because we've seen that the PCC chief is was trying to push his own candidates through, and he was upset with a few other candidates being given tickets, and then Oommen Chandy had his own candidates. So is all well within the Congress?
Well, that's a part of the pulls and pressures and the internal dynamics of any party. People compete for the same political space, and therefore, obviously, there's a little bit of push and pull and jostling which takes place. So, I don't think that that should be seen as dissidence or as some kind of disarray in the ranks. This dissonance is a normal part of the democratic process.
Is the Congress going to break tradition in Kerala and ensure that, it retains power, because that hasn't happened in Kerala?
Well, you're right. Kerala has had a cyclic tradition for a fairly long time, but we do hope that given the initiatives which have been taken over the past 5 years and the quality of governance which has been delivered, the fact that we have measured up to the concerns of women in particular, all this would really be taken into consideration by the people when they make those choices.
Indeed. All right. It's time for a short break now, but on the other side, we'll talk to Mr. Manish Tiwari about how important is it really for the Congress to retain power in Assam and in Kerala, because of considering what's happened in Uttarakhand and Arunachal Pradesh. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television in conversation with Senior Congress leader Mr. Manish Tiwari. Mr. Tiwari, like I was saying before the break, how important is it really for the Congress party to retain power in Assam and in Kerala, considering what has happened in Arunachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand?
Well, those are two different questions altogether. It's important to try and come to power in each and every state so that you're able to make a difference to the lives of people, positive governance or change with a difference, or to make change more meaningful. It's important to have the instrumentalities of the state at your disposal. So that's, whether it is Kerala, whether it's West Bengal, or it is Assam, or it's Tamil Nadu, that's true for every state. I mean, ultimately, when you make a pitch for power or when you make a bid for government, the intent is to try and get into office to be able to do something for the people. Insofar as Uttarakhand is concerned, or before that Arunachal Pradesh is concerned, well, those are constitutional coups which were orchestrated by the central government, and they have used every instrumentality at their disposal, including the office of the governor, in order to destabilize frontline governments in frontline border states. So therefore, this government does not care about federalism, the NDA BJP government. It does not care about democratic principles and democratic traditions. And the manner in which these governments have been destabilized is indicative that they are prepared to go to any extent to come to power.
Are you worried then somewhere deep down that a similar situation could prevail in some of the other states where the Congress is just barely hanging on to power?
Well, they are trying their best, and so therefore it is for us to be vigilant, to remain on guard, and ensure that their designs do not succeed, because these people do not believe in democratic principles or democratic traditions. For them, power is a means and end in itself, and therefore Prime Minister Modi and his henchman, the president of the BJP, will go to any extent to use every unconstitutional method, every unprincipled method in order to destabilize Congress governments.
Is that why in Manipur then we've seen a cabinet rejig or a cabinet reshuffle where Bobi Singh has brought in some of the rebels as well into the fold?
Well, it's always good to have everybody with you. Whosoever is the chief minister, or let's say is heading a state or heading the Congress in a particular state, needs to walk that extra mile in order to keep everybody together. The responsibility is always of the person who is the incumbent, who's been charged with the responsibility of running a state or running the party in a state, to walk that extra mile to keep everybody together.
Veerbhadra Singh, the Chief Minister of Himachal Pradesh, in an interview recently said that the time is ripe to elevate Rahul Gandhi to be the chief of the Congress party. Is that going to happen anytime soon? We saw, whole of 2014 after the elections, or maybe even through 2015, we saw several reports in newspapers talking about how Rahul Gandhi would take up the mantle very soon, very shortly. Is that still going to happen?
Well, these are processes which are internal and intrinsic to any political party. And at an appropriate time, when the party feels that there is a need to make the vice president the president, it would happen. In any case, he's touring the country, he's going around, meeting people, articulating their concerns, empathizing with their plight. You've seen the kind of unprecedented drought which is now prevailing across many Indian states. And it's most unfortunate and tragic that while the Prime Minister of India can find time for all the oligarchs and the crony capitalists and the carpetbaggers of of our economic system, he does not have time for a poor farmer who's trying to keep his body and soul together. And that's where Mr. Gandhi or the Congress fits in, that those are the people whose voice Mr. Gandhi or the Congress party articulates.
Okay. One state that we haven't spoken about is Tamil Nadu. Let's talk about Tamil Nadu now, because the Dravidian parties have been ruling the roost for the last 5 decades or so. The Congress has been out of power for almost 5 decades in the state. What are your chances this time around?
Well, you're right. And historically, from 1967 onwards, the Congress has always been in alliance with one, for the lack of a better word, Dravidian party, but I would rather like to call it a regional party than put any kind of a sort of a race qualification onto it. So under those circumstances, yes, that's the reality, and that's the reality that we have to live with. Having said that, what I'm hearing is that the DMK Congress alliance is getting its act together. There is a lot of anger against the Jayalalitha government, especially with regard to the mismanagement of the flood situation. The government was completely absent when the deluge took place. And so under those circumstances, all that will be factored in by the people when they, make their choice in the middle of May. And thus, I think after the elections are over, we need to make the extra effort to see that where we have, for whatever reasons, ceded political space to other parties or not been able to really have that kind of political footprint, we rebuild the party and try and get that political footprint.
We've seen that several disgruntled members from within the Congress have broken party fold and gone out and formed their own parties or joined some other bigger party. It's happened in Assam, it happened in Tamil Nadu as well. Is that something that you're trying to control, or is it something that you're leaving to some of those individuals?
Well, honestly, you cannot stop anybody from going. Ultimately, it's an individual choice. Are you in a political party because of certain loaves and fishes of office? Or do you believe in the ideological construct which that political party represents? So unfortunately, you have more people in India's political system who are really after the loaves and fishes of office. That ideological commitment, unfortunately, has got diluted over a period of time. And that's why you see this movement taking place. From the Congress to the BJP, or the BJP to the Congress, or the regional parties to the Congress, or the Congress to the regional parties. This is essentially because of the dilution of the ideological construct in our political system.
Indeed. Let's take this discussion forward and talk about something else and talk about the national scenario as such. In about a month and a half, the present government will complete 2 years in power. How would you rate the performance of the government of the last 2 years?
Well, they're struggling to get an E for effort because this government has lost the plot on the two largest strategic challenges that India faces. Its economy. They do not have a clue about how to handle the economy. The banking system is in a complete mess. If the NPAs of the power distribution companies would actually get factored in, there would be a run on the banks. The Indian banking system is in a serious crisis. The extent of NPAs is not 1,14,000 crores. It is actually close to 7 to 8 lakh crores. So therefore, there is a huge problem, and they don't know how to deal with it. The other strategic challenge is Pakistan. And on Pakistan, they don't know whether they are coming and going. The Pakistanis have been running circles around them, and the Indian establishment has come out looking like a complete bunch of amateurs. And similarly, whether it is with regard to social cohesion, which is the first thing which any government needs to do, that in a multi-religious, multilingual, a multi-ethnic country, you need to maintain social cohesion. They have tried their best in the name of nationalism, in the name of dietary habits, to try and break that social cohesion. Because you've had every kind of outlandish, wild, absurd and preposterous statement coming out of ministers of this government, functionaries of the party that this government represents, their ideological fellow travelers, all aimed at somehow establishing the majoritarian ethos. And it is really unfortunate that this country will have to live with these ladies and gentlemen for another 3 years.
But the people of the country gave them the mandate, and then they have the right to rule the country for the next 5 years. How they want to rule the country?
No, it is not how you want to rule the country. You have been given a mandate to rule. That mandate is circumscribed by the Constitution of India. The Constitution of India lays down the template of what can be done and what cannot be done. And these people are hell-bent on disrupting the constitutional consensus in this country with regard to pluralism, with regard to even the distribution of wealth and income, with regard to the other basic foundations on which this country stands. So therefore, a mandate does not give you the right to absolutely and flagrantly violate what is the basic structure of this country.
I'm going to take you back to something you said about Pakistan. What do you think India should do as far as Pakistan is concerned? Should we continue to have a dialogue with them? Should we cancel all dialogue and not speak to a rogue state as such? Or should we speak to Pakistan, engage them and try and settle the problem?
Well, personally, if you ask me, the time has come to actually put up a tall wall and really forget about Pakistan. And this is my personal view. This is not the view of the Congress party. And the reason why I articulate this point of view is because there is a deep state in Pakistan, the establishment in Pakistan, the ISI, the army, and the whole instrumentalities of terror which they have created. These people are not interested in peace. Unfortunately, the scars, the psychological scars of the 1971 defeat still weigh very heavily in the minds of the Pakistani generals. So till the time the Pakistani establishment does not come to terms with these psychological problems that they are afflicted with, any initiative, any endeavor from India is not going to succeed. See, they have been running circles around the Americans. That it's a country which kept on taking aid from America, which became a frontline partner in the ostensible fight against terrorism and continued to shelter Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden was not found in Allahabad. He was found in Abbottabad.
Yes.
And he was found by the same Americans who consider Pakistan to be a trusted ally, but they didn't trust them enough to inform them about the raid on Abbottabad. So Pakistan is a very complex state that you deal with, and their net export over the last 4 decades in South Asia has only been terror. They are the principal source of instability in this region, and India will have to make those tough choices whereby you will have to generate a minimum political consensus in this country as to how you need to deal with a problem called Pakistan. And as I said earlier, I'll again caveat it. These are my personal views. These are not the views of the Congress party.
Talking about your views, we've got a couple of minutes left on the program. So one final question I want to slip in there is, you recently received a lot of flack on Twitter for your comment about the crucifixion of a priest by the Islamic State. So would you want to clarify on that? Would you like to say anything about it?
Well, first of all, I do hope that he's not been crucified, because as things stand, there is no concrete information with regard to his condition.
Yes.
The reason why I put that tweet out was primarily because the government of India was not doing anything to help an Indian citizen. It could be that they do not have assets in Yemen. It could be that they did not have the inclination. So at times when you put a provocative tweet out, it does compel the administration or the government to respond. And in this case, at least they were shamed into trying to do something. How much they have done, God alone knows, because still now there is no authoritative statement from the government as to what are the whereabouts of this priest. So under those circumstances, I think it was a well-timed intervention. It was a well-timed tweet. The fact that it raised the hackles of the administration and got them to do something makes me happy.
Okay, it was done to draw the attention of those concerned, is what you're saying. Okay, Mr. Manish Tewari, Pleasure having you on the program. We run out of time,
The
unfortunately.
pleasure's all mine.
Thank you so much for being with us on To The Point. That's all the time we have on this edition of To The Point. See you again next time.